Hello, my name's Lauren Taylor and I'm part of the Hazelwood Green study area with the Spring 2020 Pittsburgh studio at Penn State. The Hazelwood Green study area focused on the new Hazelwood Green development west of 2nd Avenue and north of Tecumseh Street, so this study area in green over here. My project is titled Preserving Place in Hazelwood because I realized through community meetings that a lot of residents were afraid that change and displacement might happen as a large part of their neighborhood undergoes change related to the new Hazelwood Green development. My project hopes to address the needs of its current residents, preserve the identity of the neighborhood, and ensure that new development is welcoming of the current community. Personally, I worked on 3 sites in this area, one at the intersection of 2nd Avenue and Hazelwood Avenue up here, which I'm calling the Identity of Hazelwood, one just north of Tecumseh Street, which I'm calling the Hangout Space, and then one along the riverfront, which I'm calling Riverfront Reconnection, and I'll explain these names a little bit more as I get into each project site. So I just really quickly want to acknowledge the input I received from community members that guided my design. We were fortunate enough to be able to meet with community members a few times before the coronavirus became a big concern, and we were able to keep in touch online as well, and this feedback was incredibly valuable. So this page here is documenting some of that feedback that I received. Here I just have a few pages dedicated to the analysis I did as I began this project, which I won't get into in great detail, but this is showing analysis I did regarding the history of the neighborhood and the Hazelwood Green site and how industry has shaped them. This page is showing research related to the Hazelwood Green development and how it informed my design. The green blocks over here indicate urban open space, which would be potential areas for me to do site design. And I also documented over here land use of the development to get a sense of the character of the site as it develops. And finally, this page is showing documentation of some of the invasive plants on site in this column, as well as native plants in this column, which helped me ultimately inform the planting palettes on my riverfront site. Okay, so the first site I'm going to get into is the Riverfront Reconnection site. This site is meant to give Hazelwood residents access to the riverfront, which is currently underutilized. When I spoke with residents at the community charrette in February, I was trying to determine what type of riverfront condition they were interested in, and it seemed like there needed to be a balance between a pedestrian experience and a recreational experience. So the site is broken into 2 areas, the overlook, which is over here, which features a pedestrian walkway leading out to an overlook platform, and then this area over here, which has more of an educational and recreational focus. So there's an outdoor classroom to the side of this storage area. There's an elevated deck with tables and seating for activities, and then there's a dock area with boat slips, kayak racks, and a separate fishing dock. Design of this site really had to work with the topography, which is rather steep, as shown by the section that I have in this corner of the page. This here is a perspective of the dock area with the boat slips, kayak racks, and fishing dock. Here's the boat slips, the kayak racks, and the fishing dock in the background. And you can also start to get a sense of the elevated deck and the boathouse in the background as well. The docks are floating docks to account for water level changes due to rainfall or snowmelt events or the fluctuations caused by the dam upstream. And then kayaks would be put in the water in this area over here and then put back on the rack for storage when they're not in use. This part of the site really promotes recreation on the riverfront. This here is a perspective of the overlook, which has a walkway lined with bench seating like this and lighting that creates a pedestrian promenade experience that some residents preferred. The walkway leads out to the overlook platform at this end, which offers views of the Monongahela River, the south side across the river, and then you can start to see Pittsburgh and the city skyline in the background. This is showing the outdoor classroom, which is next to the boathouse and the storage building right here. This area has amphitheater-style seating to accommodate small groups of about a dozen people, and it also has a chalkboard for demonstrations. And finally, here's a perspective of the elevated deck, which is a sort of extension to the outdoor classroom that I just mentioned. The deck has 3 tables in here with bench-style seating to accommodate groups, and this area is really for activities and demonstrations, so groups can do crafts, learn how to identify plants, examine a toad, that sort of thing. The space can also be used for social gatherings, though, like picnics or birthday parties. And along with the human experience of this site, I also considered the ecological health. I regraded a portion of the site to try to create a restored forested floodplain, which you can see in this grading in here. I also created a planting strategy based on moisture availability, and that's the color-coded portion of this graphic. And I created 4 planting palettes for each zone. These grading and planting strategies aim to repopulate the site with native species and encourage reestablishment of plant communities that are naturally found in the area. So next is the identity of Hazelwood site. This site is located at a pretty important intersection where 2nd Avenue and Hazelwood Avenue meet, and it's where a lot of people are going to be entering the new Hazelwood Green development. So the purpose of this site is really to recognize the history and identity of the Hazelwood neighborhood to give residents a sense of ownership and belonging in the new development. It's broken into 2 areas, which would be the Treed Plaza on this end and then the Artifact Garden on this end. Here's a perspective looking in at the Treed Plaza showing the tree canopy over the seating area. During a meeting with community members, the theme of fire was mentioned and how it related to the mills that operated in the area. So there are a couple features in this plaza that reference that theme. There are pieces of orange glass that would be embedded in the pavement and are lit up from below to look like embers. And there's also misters hidden in the planting beds that create the effect of steam, which you can start to see in this rendering right here. Here's another perspective of that Treed Plaza showing the human experience within that plaza at a different time of day. This is a perspective of the Artifact Garden. This garden includes artifacts from Hazelwood's history, especially its industrial history. This image specifically is showing a Bessemer converted right here, which was an important piece of machinery used for steel production. The pathways in the garden are made from rails, alluding to the importance of the rail lines in Hazelwood's history, with fine gravel in the middle here for walking on, and then ballast on either side of the rails. The planting in the Artifact Garden includes rudderol, early growth species like those that would pop up on an unused rail line. Here are some of the details of the Treed Plaza, including its planting palette and a look at the materials, including that orange illuminated glass I mentioned before that creates the appearance of embers. And here's some of the details of the Artifact Garden, showing the planting palette and those rudderol species I mentioned, as well as the ballast and gravel that comprise the paths. So next is the hangout space. This site came out of the community charrette we had back in February, where I was able to talk to some teenagers who mentioned the lack of space for their age group to hang out. They mentioned Lewis Parklet, which is the only hangout space that exists now, and they talked about wanting fun, active programming like trampolines and games. I used this input as I divided the site up into 3 areas: the trampoline play area in the middle, the game area on this side, and then the swing node over on this end. Here's a perspective of the trampoline play area, which includes 5 in-ground trampolines here. And then it's surrounded by stacked platform seatings on either end. And then there's also a chalk wall on one side for people to get creative and draw. This is a look at the game area. I included ping pong tables and cornhole as activities in this area, but programming is pretty flexible over time. These games can be replaced with other types of outdoor games. And this is a look at the swing node. The swing node is tucked off to a side for a sense of privacy, and it has 3 large multi-person swings where teens can get together and talk and hang out. So to wrap things up, these 3 sites I've worked on do a couple of things. They embrace the identity and history of Hazelwood and help create a sense of ownership of the new Hazelwood Green development, and they also address the needs of residents as expressed through community charrettes and meetings to make their needs a priority. I'd just like to take a minute to thank everyone I've had the pleasure of working with over the past few months, whether at the community charrette or smaller group meetings. All of your feedback was incredibly helpful and enlightening, and I've really enjoyed working with all of you. Thank you also for watching this presentation I've put together and taking an interest in my work. Take care.